Hey, welcome to the Profoundly Silly Wisdom podcast. Happy New Year. This is the first recording. Again, I'm doing a sneaky live because it's private, so no one's on this really, but I'm using it I'm sort of experimenting really with doing it in a live format. So maybe I'll make these available when I've got used to the the setup. I'm still doing the tech, getting your head around the techie stuff. So anyway, I asked my soul what the message was for this particular week. And I got two cards. Again, I've decided to use the tarot format because this is actually what I use in my everyday life for guidance. I've talked a lot, if you've seen any of my other videos, about tuning into your intuition, and tarot has been one of the ways one of the tools that I've used for doing that. So the first card I got was actually the Page of Wands, which I'll show you here. And the second card I got, and I got it in reverse position, which we'll talk about later. And the second was the King of Swords. I must admit, he's not my favourite character because he's a bit lacking in emotion from my point of view. But and again, in reverse position, which we'll discuss later. But so basically, the theme of today's message is, why do New Year's resolutions not work? I'm sure most of you agree that a lot of us over the years have made many resolutions at this time of year, and yet so few of them stick. So what is it that makes them fail, and how, more importantly, how do we make lasting and meaningful change if we're wanting to grow in our lives? So that's kind of where the page comes in, because the page is all about that creative spark. If you see, he's got like a red feather in his cap, it looks like a flame, and the wand, which is this staff thing, they're called wands in tarot, refer to the suit of fire, and which is all about that sort of initiating, sparky, creative energy. So today's message is aimed at people who are, wanting to create something, which I guess makes sense at this time of year. A lot of us are thinking, what do I want to do? Some of us are thinking, some of us are glad the last year's over. and a lot of us are thinking at this time, what is it I want to create in this new year? And you may have resolutions across the board. It could be in your working life, it could be in relationships, it could be a business you want to start, or some kind of social impact thing, or it could be something really small, seemingly small, like just a hobby you fancy trying out, or just maybe socializing a bit more if you were a bit insular in the last year. So whatever it is, this is a time of year when we're in this kind of mode. And it, the card was reversed, which in this particular context is referring to, it's more of internalized energy. So these are things that you haven't necessarily shared with those around you yet. They're sort of just in that initial phase of just a spark of curiosity. And talking of curiosity, if you look at the page, he's kind of looking at this wand, this sprouting wand, with curiosity. It's like, oh, what's going on here? This is interesting. And so it's all about that kind of scenario where you have these sparks of interest. You're wanting to do something different. Your curiosity has been piqued. And so where do we go from there? So, well, a lot of us end up rushing into this. And the reason it's, the King of Swords is not a bad character. Don't let my bias influence you. He's just not the most emotional. And me being an emotional person, he wouldn't necessarily be my first choice to spend the day with. But he's actually, every character in the deck has a sort of light side and a shadow side, but he's in reverse. So to me, that means, if you think of a page as at the beginning of their career, they're like the equivalent of an assistant or an apprentice in our world now. They'd be training to be a knight, perhaps, but probably become a squire and then a knight. So, they're right at the initial stage, which is why it's talking about the initial stage of creativity. But a lot of us want to rush in and get to the king stage, which is basically king is all about, it's not to do with gender, by the way, so this isn't, kings, this is just talking about a stage of development. So someone in the king stage has, already achieved what it is, they're an expert in their field, they've achieved great success. And so that kind of comes down to the first mistake we make. We often sort of rush to, get to the end result. And sometimes it means that instead of staying in the sort of curious phase of, what is it I really want to create? And, that kind of interesting, playful sort of energy. Instead, we sort of rush to find a solution. We just want the problem to be solved. And that kind of comes down to, the clue is in the word resolution, because if you think resolution is it's got the word solution in it. And so resolutions are often very problem focused. So it's just quickly fix this problem, instead of actually taking time to reflect, well, what is it I really want to create? So the first mistake we make is rushing to find a solution. And quite often what happens is that, the solution that we come up with isn't actually, it doesn't create the outcome that we want. And so what happens, it doesn't solve the problem. So, say I want to feel more confident about myself, or what's an obvious sort of thing, like an off the peg or pret-a-porter solution to that could be, I need to lose 10 pounds, because, there are plenty of people touting diet and exercise regimes to make you feel better about yourself. But actually, that desire for confidence, maybe that's not the way that it would be best expressed. And so you end up putting yourself on this diet and, you're starving yourself. And then by the third week, you're like, screw this. This is too much like hard work, because it was hard work. Your heart wasn't in it because it wasn't really the solution for you. It was just an obvious solution. And again, this is the big issue that I have with resolutions in general, because again, it comes down to the suit of swords is air, which is referring to your mind and your intellect, but particularly your logical mind. So what happens is that we rely on our logical mind. And often when we do that, instead of tuning into our heart, we're basically just picking up a logical solution. I'll feel better if I'm skinnier, or, for less wrinkles, or whatever it is, whatever your off the peg solution might be, your logical solution. But the problem is, if you haven't really taken the time to explore with curiosity what it is you really want, then you don't really know, and you're just picking this solution out of thin air, and it's not going to solve the problem. And if you like, even seeing it as a problem is just, a problem in itself. So that's mistake number one. And, so instead of being guided by inspiration, you're just like in that fix it mode, which is what, our logical mind does. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is telling other people too soon. And again, that brings me back to this card in reverse, because swords also can refer to communication. And that can happen often. If you think about it, you've got a spark of interest in something you desire to create, maybe, or a way that you want to feel good or better about something. And if you, rush to tell people too soon, sometimes they can end up kind of, they give you their logical advice, basically. And before you know, perhaps, say you wanted to become a singer or an artist, or, set up a business, and, you tell people, you get all excited about it because you've got this vision in your mind about what it would be like, and, it's something that you want to do. You rush out and you tell people, and instead of getting encouraged, they'll just share with you why they think that's not a very good idea, or not a very logical thing to do. Again, they're speaking out of their conditioning. And what happens is that they end up squashing this. You see, it's a very delicate little feather, and that's what our sparks of inspiration are like in that first instance. And you know, because the card was reversed, it's telling me it's a very small flame. So what we need to do with these sparks of energy, instead of sharing them too readily, we need to fan the flames, you know, and we need to give ourselves the chance to, you know, really get in touch with what that desire is, and to allow the desire to build. And also clarity will come as you explore that idea with curiosity, you know, however you choose to do that, whether that's just, you know, through meditation, reflection, journaling, whatever, but just giving yourself that space. So don't rush and tell others too soon, because they can end up, I mean, we have that saying, don't we, pouring cold water on the fire. You know, people will pour cold water by giving you their opinions, which, you know, they're not necessarily doing it from a bad place, but they don't have, you know, they're not connected to your heart's desires, so they're not going to know. They're just going to tell you what they think from their logical mind, again, from their programming. So that's mistake number 2. And mistake number 3 is coming back to the Suit of Swords and the, you know, the mind, the intellect, is that we try to work it all out in advance. Now, so if you've got, you know, perhaps you've got a bigger desire, you know, you're thinking, I know that I want to do something different. You know, I'm in a stage of my life where, you know, I've been doing a lot of, you know, I've been doing the same work for many, many years. And I knew that I was coming to the end of that without knowing what I was going into. And so, you know, it's natural for our minds to want to know how it's all going to work out. And we want to plan everything from A to Z, you know, every single detail. But the thing is, when you do that, again, remember, we're at the spark stage and the internalized spark stage. So when you dump a lot of, or, you know, you do loads of research, you know, oh, okay, I want to be a singer. How do I do that? You know, I'll go on X Factor or whatever. I don't know. You do your research, but what happens, the more and more information you gather, the more you actually overwhelm that little spark. Because you think each of these, you know, these pieces of research is like a big log that you're shoving onto this poor little spark before it's had the chance to take. So again, I feel like the message that's coming through is really just give yourself space. And this is what doesn't happen with resolutions, because we feel that pressure, you know, I've got to sort my whole life out, I've got to get it all done, you know. And so, you know, again, sometimes sometimes it gets killed by other people, which was mistake number 2. Sometimes we kill our own sparks of inspiration just by trying to work it all out in our heads. So those are the kind of 3 main mistakes we make. So what do we do instead? Well, ideally, we're like this guy, you know, we'll have an attitude of curiosity. So instead of rushing to become the expert, you know, and the successful entrepreneur or whatever it is that you want to be, we give ourselves space, you know, we honor those sparks, you know, because that is actually your intuition speaking to you. And that's the voice of your soul. So actually paying attention to them, making a note of, you know, and there's one thing that I've really learned about following your guidance, is that a lot of the time, you know, with the intuitive mind, and we're talking about when you're wanting to go in a new direction. Obviously, if you want to book a holiday to wherever, you just follow a logical sequence, it's different. But if you're wanting to do something new in your life, and you can feel that yearning within you, then you've got to learn to kindle these sparks. And the first thing to do is to notice them. And a lot of the time, they're not necessarily connected, you know, to the, you know, if you have a big vision, for example, you might just get nudged to do something different, you know, just a little hobby. And you think, well, what is the point? Are you like dancing? Okay, I want to set up a business. What good is it for me to go dancing? I mean, for goodness sake, you know, that's not going to, and you, again, conditioning, logical mind steps in the reverse position. And, you know, before you know it, you've convinced yourself that spark is a waste of time. And the thing is, if you start judging your own desires, you're basically judging yourself, and you're saying your desires aren't valid, you know. I'm not going to follow your desires because they're not valid. Then they're a waste of time. And you're shutting yourself down. You're shutting your creativity down, because the thing is, you never know where that spark will take you. And in fact, you pretty much will never know. You have to take the step before you realize, that's why that happened. That's why I was encouraged to do that. And that's definitely been my experience. And I've done a lot of shutting myself down over the years and stopping myself from developing, because I just couldn't see how it was going to work out. How am I ever going to earn enough money to sustain myself? I'm used to doing things a certain way. So that's the first thing. Notice and honor your sparks, because that is your guidance speaking to you. And literally write them down. I'm telling you, it's worth doing this. Also, give yourself time. Don't be in a rush to try and get all the steps laid out. Kindle the flame, allow that desire to grow, because again, this is your authentic self speaking. And then finally, that's the time to act. And this is what is the difference between making resolutions and living from your intuition, your intuitive mind. It's the difference between coming up with logical solutions to problems, which again, if you think about it, all of the problems are created in your logical mind anyway. So, do you really, is that the best place to solve the problem? It's the place where the problem started. But, again, it's it's that conditioned way of thinking, or it's problem solving, if you like, versus inspiration. And that's what, that's the important part of, learning to follow your intuition, is about learning to follow the inspiration and to act from inspiration rather than from this conditioned logical sequence. Because as we know, with resolutions, 2 weeks in, you're like, it's just draining, because there's no spark there. There's no enthusiasm. It's cold. I'm forcing myself to jog outside and it's raining, and I just give up. Whereas if I'm following inspiration, it's going to give you that fire to push through the challenges, and that's the difference. So it might seem, you might think, really? How am I going to get anywhere? It's the tiny little flame. How is that going to turn into my loving relationship, or my family life, or, my the job that I love, or the impact that I want to have in the world? But that's where all of these things start, and the people who are really successful, as in not just manage to achieve stuff like earn lots of money or get status, but who are genuinely fulfilled, they're people who've learned to fan the flame. So that's the message for you. So I hope that you will take the time to notice and honor your sparks of inspiration, to understand that that is your intuition speaking to you. And that is the place of genius as well. So my question to you then is, what have you been noticing? What sparks are alive in you right now? And what baby step, not rushing to try and do it all, but what baby step can you take to help foster that enthusiasm and fan that flame? And then it will take on a life of its own. As we know, fire is very, very powerful. It's so much more powerful to let the inspiration drive your action, rather than to try and force it all from your logical mind, which again, eventually you'll run out of energy, because you've got so many other things that you're juggling at the same time. So I hope you found that message helpful. If you did, please like the video. And more importantly, if you know someone who is trying to make change in their life, and who's feeling that call to kind of, maybe they're feeling a call to go in a new direction, and maybe they don't really know how to live from their intuition. They don't know, you know, how to make it happen, then please send it to people like that, because that's who I'm wanting to speak to at this time. You've got plenty of other people. If you just want the logical how to's, then I'm not your person. And of course, if you want to be part of that journey with me, because obviously I'm living this life myself, I'm sharing from my own experience, then please subscribe to this channel, and we can make that journey together. So see you soon, and I hope you are enjoying the new year and fan those flames of inspiration.